Blast off. Hey everybody, this is so exciting. Oh my goodness. My name is Patty Byrne and this is Stacy Milburn.
Hi.
And we are getting better at the tech on this. This is awesome. So we are here with folks this afternoon and in perpetuity, because that's the nature of the interwebs, to talk about our praxis, so to speak, and our bodies, and being in political movement, regardless of movements, but in particular disability justice movement. But crip bodies are in every movement. We know this, right? Before there was the idea of disability justice, there were, people with disabilities organizing in every movement. And it's exciting to actually have a space where disabled folks of color, queer, and gender nonconforming people with disabilities can call our home as well within disability justice. And so we're going to be talking. We have some prompting questions for ourselves, but we want to hear your prompting questions. Hi, Billy. And we have someone supporting us on tech who's off screen, but I just want to give her props because she's awesome. Her name is Caitlin. Yay for Caitlin.
And Jeanette, can you tell us if you are capturing this on the transcription feed?
Is that a yes?
I'm checking.
Okay. Let's hope she is.
Let's take a second.
And in the meantime, I'm going to, from memory alone, recall Stacy's bio. How about that? Because I can't see this far away from my computer. So, Stacy Milburn was born, well, I don't know where she was born. Stacy Milburn hails from Fayetteville, North Carolina, where she started her organizing, working with disabled youth. And she has her master's in nonprofit administration, where she was actually able to support all of her peers in understanding that the reality of organizing shit and the theory of organizing shit are different. And the reality of organizing shit she has done in the Bay Area with multiple formations, including Blessedly Sins Invalid, and she continues to organize with multiple formations. And I'm sure her bio was more eloquent and had far less cursing, but yeah.
No, that was super generous. Thank you. So this is Patty Byrne. She's a...
Just from memory.
Yeah, I'm trying. No pressure. This is Patty Byrne, founder of Sins Invalid, and I'm the executive director and artistic director. Patty has been organizing since the early 80s in the social justice left, and I feel like when we talk about in workshops, people getting left behind as disabled people, I think of like what that might have been like for Patty. She's done work around sexual violence and women of color space, has done work around Haiti, and has so much to offer our movements, and I feel really lucky that we're getting to have this conversation together. And also for Sins' work. So we're good to go on the captioning now too.
Great. And if people want to read our formal bios, which actually doesn't have a lot of information anyway, we're trying to keep it short. You can look that up. And for anybody that does get offended by cursing, know on the front end, right here and right now, as has been demonstrated, I do curse. If that's an issue, I suggest you turn this off. Okay, going forward. We were going to talk about our bodies and movement, because we're all in our bodies in movement, and neither of us wrote a script on this or anything. Maybe we can ask each other the prompting questions, or do you want to just?
No, that sounds good.
Okay, I'm asking first.
Okay.
Wait, you want to ask me first?
No, that's fine.
Okay, so Stacy Milburn, how did you negotiate the lived experience of your body and the social process of disablement with the need for organizing right now. And we know it's a critical, like almost crisis level need for organizing.
So I'm really feeling the social aspect of disablement this week and last week because my car is broken, my wheelchair is broken, and then there were such a tragedy around the fires up north, and that impacting the smoke here in the East Bay and making it so I couldn't go outside. So all of these like environmental conditions that make the world not accessible to me have been like exactly what's going on right now. And I've had to adjust how I do work. And so something I actually learned from you, Patty, is around thinking about like what is political space in our homes as like a site for where we live and where we do our work and where we build relationships, and where we do movement building and community building. And so things like Yomi and I gave a workshop for the Radical Monarchs, and I couldn't go outside, so they all signed permission slips to come do it in my living room. Or me and my friends spend a lot of hangout time with me in bed and them in bed, or watching movies, that sort of thing, or making sure that if I'm going to go somewhere, I have someone to go with, or it's in a way that I can meet there. So those have been some of the ways I've been dealing with feeling really disabled right now. And then I think also just my personal, disability is always shifting for everyone. And as I acquire more impairments and negotiate different kind of access needs, that's been active too. And it is really hard to negotiate that with feeling like, oh, there are so many important things in the world that we really need to respond to right now, and not being mad at my body for maybe not going at the pace that feels like it might be needed just to survive. I don't know, what are your thoughts about that, Patty, around how we negotiate the lived experiences of impairment and also process of disablement and balancing that out with like organizing?
Well, one of the main things that I try to do in my work is invite, like I'm going to be in my body, which means that I am going to be in pain. I'm going to be, in my consciousness, which means, for example, like hers, like I'm going to be who I am, and I invite other people when they're working with me to be who they are as well, which is in their bodies, and to try to make a space. And I say this in all the spaces I work in, to try to make a liberated zone right where we are, so that we are all invited to, be in our brilliance and in our aches and pains, so that we can, lay down, we can take breaks, we can, do what you need to do. I think there's a culture within the left that's unrealistic for most people, which pushes us toward left irrelevancy. Like, actually, most people don't sit for like 2 or 3 hours and not eating anything but chips at dinner time, right? That's just, who does that? Nobody, right? Like, and I mean, it's just, if you're going to work with just people that aren't ideologically committed to the left, which is most people, right? You need to take food breaks and bathroom breaks and make jokes and just be, social to the extent that it's possible, and antisocial to the extent that that's possible. And comfortable and uncomfortable, and all the ways that we are, we need to have space for being human, basically. And so I'm going to do that as much as possible, and in those spaces I work in, I try to invite other people to do that as well. So that helps create access, not just for me, but hopefully for everyone. That's one way that I negotiate the demands of being human in a pretty inhumane time. is to expand our humanity. I also try to remember that, like, this has been a war. There has been a war going on against, people with disabilities, against people of color, against immigrants, against specifically Black communities, specifically against non-cis men, specifically like against poor people, against basically, everyone that is not the monopolizers of power. Since this continent, was invaded, there's been a war. And while this is a time when the mask, so to speak, has been stripped off of the multiple colonial administrations, the reality is that, it didn't begin with Trump, and it's not going to end with Trump, unless the whole planet does, but that's another conversation. I think that there is a crisis, and that is real, but I don't think that, like taking an extra 15 minutes in a meeting to like make sure that there's food is gonna stall revolution. Like it's 15 minutes, so those are two things that I try to do. I think I want to talk a little bit just about being in my body and what that is. By body, I do mean body mind. It's just more syllables. But there is a balance for me of when I can actually deal with other humans, period. And sometimes my body's like, no, you're not going to deal with other humans, actually. And it's time to not work with other people. And maybe I am not clear thinking on words because I'm in too much pain, or maybe I'm just like crawling out of my skin or whatever. There's so many reasons. But sometimes I also am like, okay, I am not needed for this, so I'm not going to do this. And that can be movement-based stuff, or it could be places where it's good to like make an appearance. And I was like, you know what, like let the younger Crips do it. Like I'm hella decrepit at the moment, so I'm just going to be my decrepit self and alone. Or I'll have a friend over for dinner, and then we can talk a little bit about work, but then putting a cap on it because I'll get grumpy. So yeah, I just try to be realistic about what I, as an individual human being, have the capacity for at any given time in the complications of my body and the complications of my mind. Yeah. We have some notes too, because we did prepare a tiny bit. Do you want to talk about how the personal is political for you?
Sure.
We've kind of been doing that. Sorry, that's redundant.
So I think it's frequently really easy to talk about disability justice as an idea, but it's really hard to talk about how do we make it a practice, both collectively and just our personal practices. But I don't think we can have a world where the world that we dream of unless we're also concretely building it at the same time. And I feel like a lot of what my learning has been around DJ has just been what works and what doesn't work. So, for example, I really value interdependence as a disability justice principle. And I've also learned like the hard way around what does interdependence look like, and how do you negotiate power and boundaries and relationships and all these things, but you can't do that just by talking about an idea. You have to be actually practicing it and being in relationship with other people. So I think just thinking of that, or some of the ideas around what makes good organizing sense, trying those out, and then seeing how things get adapted. I think disability justice is very much like a living, breathing thing that we're still figuring out what it means. And so, of course, it makes sense to be experimenting with all the pieces, both as a personal practice. But what about you? I mean, so personally, personal and political, I think of like, oh, when I hang out with my friends, we talk about access needs, or do check-ins, or all the things that I might do if I'm just doing organizing, also just doing in relationship with other people or myself. Has been helpful. But what about you, Patty?
I think, I mean, it's funny because, it's been, I think that's one of the basic tenets of disability justice is that, it's not just a theory, it's a practice. And I think, that is the personal is political. Like, there's no way that, the idea that the personal is somehow not political, to me, is kind of housed in an historical era where people were thinking that, where certain people were thinking that it wasn't that you could have a political movement without actually addressing needs of people that are in the movement. And I feel like that, I'm not saying it's not there at all anymore, but, that era where that can hold tenacious roots, I feel like is leaving us. I think that hopefully most people get that we're actual living beings in movement, and it's not like we're just intellectual automatons that are just, like ideologically committed and just what I think. Like, honestly, like thoughts, yeah, everybody has thoughts, like big whoop, like it's what are you doing about those thoughts? It's like, well, how does that show up in real time, real space? Like, how is that? That's what's going to change the material conditions of the world, is how we actually roll, not just what we think. I'm not saying that we shouldn't think about our actions. Of course we should. And we, in the same way we have to think about our actions, like actions without, thoughts without actions to follow them up in a practice are kind of unhelpful at this moment. Like, we've had enough political theory to, last us for a long ass time. I think it's about how we behave, honestly, and like not to be like an over materialist or, determinist, but, this is life. There's lots of ways of being alive, but as a human right now, and actually, I feel like disabilities really taught me this. Like, just the lived experience of disabilities really taught me, like, there's just a practicality that in the body that just has to be acknowledged. Like, no matter how fancy I would, when I was younger, and I would be like, oh, I, can somehow, like, whatever, like, leave my disability at the door and try to be fancy with something, and like, and then I would not necessarily, but I would inevitably like piss all over myself or something. And it's like, yep, just bring it back down to earth here, honey. Like, this is reality. Like, and I mean, it's just like your body is your body. It's going to do what it's going to do. And like, there's a reality to life, right? Like, no matter how much political theory I read, if I don't do shit about it, then, I should just stay, I should at least not get in anyone's way. I guess. So my point is that, yes, the personal is kind of obviously very political, and we are, if we don't put our practice at the same imperative as what we're talking about, we'll just be talking while more and more people are imprisoned, and more people are left out of movement, and more people are going to be, I'm just thinking about the young woman with cerebral palsy that her parents were deported, or she was actually supposed to be deported. It's just, we can all talk whatever mess, but there's like real life shit happening, and like I don't want to be talking about capitalism while not responding to the fact that like my own Medi-Cal is getting cut. Like that doesn't make any kind of common sense to me. Sorry, I might be rambling.
So for anybody who is on the stream, I don't think you're rambling, but anybody who's on the screen, feel free to ask us questions. We can see them. We can't reach the like button from here, but we're seeing everything that you're writing and sending love back. So please let us know if you have any questions.
Should we go down to the next question we have for each other?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. And if I am rambling, then I'm okay with that too.
Good.
Okay, Stacy. How do you experience pain? It's in all of its forms in shared, like, quote, community space or an organizing space. Because if we're at home with our friends, obviously we would like try to process it, right? Or at least I would hope so. But what do you do with pain, physical, emotional, etc., in organizing space?
Yeah, this is a good question, and something I was just talking about last week, because I feel like the way ableism has impacted me is people look at me and assume suffering, like that is like wheelchair, and a lot of my impairments is literally like an image that people have for human suffering, or a reason not to be alive. Like it's better to be dead than this significantly impaired. So it makes it really challenging to talk about pain with people or in a space that doesn't understand that fuller context, because it requires a lot of being vulnerable with people that I don't think share my values around my lived experience or my body. So I think for me, I choose when to be vulnerable and why. So there are times where I do speak to being in pain or let myself be crip, especially if it like serves disabled people in the space or DJ in general. But then there's other times where I might choose to do that more privately, and I think that's okay too. Like at the end of the day, self-determination is about being able to make decisions for yourself, and there's no one way to be a good politically disabled person, just like there's no one way to be a good queer. Those are my initial thoughts. At the same time, like I'm really committed to making space for people with all kinds of bodies, and that frequently being in a body means that you're in pain, and I spend a significant amount of my time in pain. And so if I'm not able to be in spaces where it's okay to be in pain, then that means I'm going to be in those spaces a lot less. So being able to come to that, I really like coming over to Patty's because you always have the hookup over here, and it's okay for people just to be however they are. Yeah, those are my initial thoughts. But what about you, Patty? How do you experience pain in all of its different forms in spaces or in public?
First, I want to acknowledge what you named as the context, I think, is so critical. That, depends on who we are and how we roll, but in general, people with mobility impairments, particularly people in chairs, I think. I mean, yeah, particularly people in chairs are seen as necessarily in physical and emotional pain. I actually can't speak to other people with disabilities or the projections people have about other people with other disabilities, because that's not my experience. I've always been the chair. But I do know that people, have come up to me on the street and been like, oh, that must hurt. And when I was younger, I'd be like, what are you talking about exactly? Like, you're ableism? Is that what you're talking about? Now that I'm 15, I've been sitting on my butt for 46 years. Yeah, it hurts. Thank you very much. If you are up to kissing my ass, that might make it better. But yeah, it does hurt to sit on your ass. But when I was in my 20s and 30s, it wasn't that big because there was no pain. And it was a huge thing for me to resist that trope, because it was just a trope that was being danced out, that had no basis in my experience. And I know that pity is something that, regardless of disability, that we get, be it visible or non-apparent. And that context is always present. So I appreciate you naming that, because that's the context in which we are both experiencing pain and letting others be aware if you are in pain. At this point, a big thing for me is, and I just used a catchphrase in my head, like, I don't work with assholes. Meaning, if somebody is going to be judgmental of me or my colleagues, we're not working together. I'm sorry, it's not happening. If someone is gonna, if someone doesn't have compassion for the human state, so to speak, they can just do that somewhere else. So that's a big thing for me, is just working with people who are good people and understand that pain is a part of life, and sometimes we're going to be in pain, emotional or physical. That's life. I think another very important thing for me is to not act out when I'm in pain. That's my ideal. That is an aspirational goal. I'm mostly successful at it, but not always, believe me. Ask Stacy. I'm not always good at it. Sometimes when I'm in pain, I act out because it hurts. And those are times for timeouts. I'll put myself on timeout. It's time to pet the cat. It's time to say, oh, I am not doing really well with humans right now. It's time for a Stranger Things break, or whatever current, Netflix thing is on. Yeah, but I try very hard not to act out. Because I have two people in pain, if you're in pain. I think similarly, as with the first question around negotiating pain and organizing, I think it's important to create a culture where it is okay to, be in the truth of our bodies, where you can, and I'm really grateful that I feel like, I know that sounds really tribes, where we can say, I need to process information slowly, or I need to, and again, this is aspirational, because do we always succeed? No, but do we try? Yes. I need to process information slowly because I'm in pain, or, I need to step out or whatever, but just actually have it be something that can be verbalized and can and not be a source of shame. In the notes it says resisting shame, and I think that has been a lot of my work in my life. Has been to decolonize myself from ableist shame and from white supremacist attempts to shame and patriarchal attempts to shame. And I feel like I've gotten a fingerhold under most of it. Like I'm not a very shame-based person anymore, which is intense. It's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. And for younger folks or for any other folks, particularly for younger folks with disabilities, you know who you are if you experience a lot of shame, because you can't even acknowledge that. Like there's another side to it. It's really awesome. It's really awesome.
Patty, can you say more about how you got to that place?
Oh, Caitlin just asked how I got to that place of resisting shame. Yeah, a lot of therapy, like, for me. And there's a lot of prayer, not to like necessarily like the Christian supremacist God, but like what I understand as the divine. There's a lot of prayer. And prayer, not like, please make me different, but the prayer was, please see me for who I am. And then I realized I was praying to myself, and I started putting pictures of little girl Patty all over the place, and teenage awkward Patty, and the most difficult photos were not the teenage and not the cute child, but the in between, like age 8 for me, 8 to 12, 8 to 14, something like that. Those photos, and like just like connecting with myself and like loving myself basically through the years that I was taught to be ashamed. And yeah, it was really awesome to. I've been to a bazillion workshops. I mean, it's just, I've done so much work to I guess, like, realize that I'm amazing. Not to be cocky, but I am, because it's the natural state of being, not just for me, but for everyone. Like, we're amazing. Like, humans, we have our faults, and we're probably going to take down the world, which is unfortunate. But we're more than just humans, right? To me, this is my thing, it's nonsense about. To me, personally, Patty, like, we are so much more than the limits of our humanity, yeah, I just am happy with myself as a being. Maybe not as a human being, but as a being, and I really invite other people to, just keep knowing yourself until you know how awesome you are.
Y'all ready for another question?
Okay, another question from our off-screen tech support.
What can cross-disability organizing teach us about disability justice, or just everything in general?
Do you want to take that one?
Sure. So this is something I've been thinking on for the last few days, and really feeling like there's some things about disability justice, obviously about disability justice, that you can only learn from being around other disabled people, and working it out with other disabled people. And I really value mixed ability spaces, and I really want the social justice left to be more accessible to people with disabilities, which frequently has meant one or two people in a space like advancing access for disabled people who aren't able to be present. And then at the same time, I also really value like space that's just for us, where we're doing the work together to even figure out like what does liberation collectively mean for us. And I think of it like sometimes people think, oh, it's just sorting through access needs. And to me, that feels like preschool level, like that isn't even starting school yet. That's the conversation we need to have, like just to be in the space together. But I think of like the hard work is like, for myself personally, has been figuring out like how to articulate like emotional needs or recognize when they have them, or like be open and doing things with people and all those kind of things. And then also I think too, just how for me, like disability justice spaces I feel like places where I invest so much of myself in, because it's like one of the few areas like that reflect Black back, that queer disabled people of color or queer disabled folks, disabled people of color have lives that are of value and like are worthy, and just you're in that kind of like high stakes place where you're putting like your whole heart in. I think things do get complicated, and like we come to the work with like, I mean, just like people have bodies, people have lived experiences, and come to spaces with all kinds of histories. So I think also part of the work is like figuring out how to work things out with each other, and when it makes sense to stay in relationships, like fighting for those relationships and being with each other through really hard things are important. And thinking a lot in my own life around like, I don't know that this is totally related, but it feels related. Just like how to move from acknowledging when you didn't do things how you wished you had done them, and like a place of like having regrets, to like a place of accountability and like being able to take responsibility for things and then shift things going forward, and show up for the people you care about and also the things that you value for yourself. So I don't know, that's all kind of rambly, but I think just like as I work with other queer disabled people, those are the things that are like frequently popping up for me. What about you, Patty?
No, that makes a lot of sense to me, because I think it makes me think of a few things. I think one of the things that ableism does to us is, and for folks with disabilities that might be paying attention, you know how like if you like get up and you go outside, they're like, oh, congratulations, or you get you do well on a test and it's like, wow, you did well on that test. Or if your clothes are coordinating, wow, you look really great. And it's just this like over, it's misleading. It's misleading because actually, of course people should give space for us to be at every different capacity. But everyone should have space for different capacities, which includes the fact that we can be brilliant and do amazing work. And unfortunately, I think ableism, within ableism, people with disabilities are often given such low expectations of what they can do that people don't get feedback when they're not doing as well as they could be. And I don't think that's helpful at all. I think we have to be accountable to our best abilities. you know, and that will change day to day. That'll change from one period of our lives to another. But I want people to expect that I can show up. I want people to be able to depend on me. And I want to be able to depend on me, you know. And I think that it is a really fucked up byproduct of ableism that there are such low expectations of us that we think that, you know, just by showing up that somehow, you know, we did great. You know, so no, actually, like we should, this is something that came up in Sins actually, with our performances. And I remember talking to Leroy and being like, I don't want to, you know, he and I were both like, no, it's not enough just to like do a performance. Like it has to be an excellent performance, you know? Like I don't want it to be like good for a group of Crips. Like I want it to be good. I want to be good. I don't just want to be good. I want to be excellent. I want to be life-changing. You know, yeah, I want all of our work to be life-changing. And regardless of who's doing it, you know. But especially in some ways, I know that the work I do can be life-changing because I've seen it, you know. So why shouldn't it? Anyway, point being, I think that makes a lot of sense to me around like pushing ourselves has a particular, ableism has had a particular impact on us as though we can kind of skate by, you know, on just kind of being not our best. I don't appreciate that. Yeah, that made a lot of sense to me. Sorry, I think I went into my head a little bit thinking about all of the different times that I've done that or have seen that, and it's painful. And it also makes me think about the unicorn effect, you know, which happens in different communities where it's like, I'm the unicorn amongst the horses, and doing mixed ability organizing, we're all motherfucking unicorns. Like, you cannot be the special one, you know, like everybody's got their needs. Everybody's gonna revolve around you just because you're a Crip. You know, and yeah, that's new for some people. And it's good when we get like pushed on that. There are some things that only another person with a disability can tell me, for real. And it's really nice to be in that community. I've said the story a few times, like, yeah, I've really, but it's happened in multiple ways. Basically, I've been called out on my bullshit by other Crips in a way that, you know, somebody that's not disabled just can't. So I really appreciate that about mixed ability organizing. Yeah. Was that a...
So what?
I think we should start wrapping up since we have about a minute left.
Oh, we have a minute. Jeez Louise.
Yeah.
Wow. You know, I hope you guys have enjoyed this as much as
I know there's so much conversation I want to have now because now I'm thinking about all the ways internalized ableism like outputs, and
yeah.
we could talk about that for hours.
Yeah. So if people have ideas for what you want to hear us talk about, then please say that. And if you have ideas, like if you want to talk with us and you can, if you're in the Bay Area, like let us know and let's do it on camera. Or if there are, if you know how to do it on not telepathically, but like if you know how to do that technologically, you know, where you could be not in the Bay Area and talk with Stacy, or not in the Bay Area and talk with me and have it be Facebook Live, then let us know that. Because yeah, this is about just more ways of having broader conversations. So thank you if you're here now. Thank you if you're here in the future. Yeah, we'll be in touch.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you,
Patty.
Caitlin. Thank you. Yay. I want to read all these comments. Talk